Jules Costa arrived at my apartment on the first of the month with one duffel bag, no moving truck, and no small talk. She stepped inside, set the bag down, turned the deadbolt behind her, turned my deadbolt, first thing, like she'd rehearsed it, crossed to the window, looked down at the street for a long 3 seconds, and then faced me and said, "I've waited for this." And before my brain could finish sprinting through every wrong idea you're having right now, she held up one hand and killed them all. "Not for what you're thinking, Owen. I've waited 3 weeks, 3 exact weeks, since the last box of Vanessa's cleared this apartment and her name came off your lease. Because that's how long I needed her to be officially, provably gone before I could say the next sentence out loud in this room." She took a breath like a diver. "Vanessa didn't dump you. She ran. And I answered your roommate ad 11 minutes after you posted it, because I've been trying to get inside this apartment for a month, and I need you sitting down for why. Let me rewind you 90 days, fast, because you need to feel the wrongness of the breakup the way I'd been living in it. I'm Owen Price, 33, sound engineer. Studios, film work, the occasional band that pays in exposure and pizza. 2 years with Vanessa Lorne, bookkeeper at a boutique wealth management firm downtown. Funny in a dry way that snuck up on you. Allergic to drama. The person who color-coded our spice rack and cried at insurance commercials. And 90 days ago I'd come home from a night session to find her keys on the counter, her closet gutted, and a note, typed, that read like a form letter from someone I'd never met. She'd realized we wanted different things. She'd taken a position abroad. She wished me well. Please don't contact her. 14 words of signature material at the end. The only handwritten line, "Don't sell the Martin. That's all I ask." The Martin is my guitar. She'd never once cared about the guitar. Everyone processes a blindside differently. I processed mine like an audio engineer, which is to say I sat with the recording of my own relationship and kept hearing artifacts. The typed note from a woman who handwrote grocery lists. The wished you well coldness from someone who couldn't end a phone call abruptly. Her phone, disconnected. Not just blocking me, dead number. Her socials, deleted, not deactivated. Her office, when I finally swallowed my pride and called, "Ms. Lorne is no longer with the firm," delivered in a tone with a lawyer standing behind it. And the strangeness didn't stop at her. My bank flagged and froze my checking account for suspicious activity 6 weeks after she left. A review letter, a case number, a hold on my own money that no one on any phone line could explain. A credit card I'd never opened showed up on my report. Billing address, this apartment. And in between those 2 events, someone broke into my place while I was at work. Through the door, cleanly, no pry marks, and took, as far as I could ever determine, absolutely nothing. The cops wrote it up as attempted, interrupted. I remember standing in my ransacked then carefully restacked living room thinking, what kind of burglar alphabetizes on the way out? I told myself these were 3 different bad luck stories. Grief does that. It files things separately so you don't have to look at the folder they'd make together. So, money tight, second bedroom empty, roommate ad posted on a Tuesday night. And 11 minutes later, a reply from a name I knew, Jules Costa, Vanessa's best friend since middle school. A paramedic I'd met maybe a dozen times across 2 years. Always warm, always slightly watchful. The friend who'd hugged me at Vanessa's birthday and said, "Take care of her," in a voice I'd filed under protective, and should have filed under worried. Her message said she needed a place, the timing was luck, and she promised not to make it weird. Reader, she made it weird by the deadbolt. At my kitchen table, day 1, boxes of my own life still half sorted around us, Jules took out her phone, set it between us, and said, 3 things, in order, and then you can yell. 1. She pressed play on a voicemail. Saved, she said, to 3 devices and a safety deposit box. Vanessa's voice. Unmistakable and unrecognizable. Low, rushed, scraped raw, recorded somewhere with road noise behind it. Jules, it's me. Don't call back. This number dies tonight. I'm okay. I'm not okay, but listen, rules. No police. If anyone shows you a badge, assume it's his until proven otherwise. He has people who carry them. Don't go near the firm. Don't go near Owen. No, God. Go near Owen. Someone has to. Jules, I left something where I lived and I couldn't move it, and they know it exists but not where, and as long as they think it might be there, they'll circle him, and he doesn't know anything. He doesn't know anything. That was the whole point of how I did it. The note, I made it cruel so it would be safe. Tell him, no. Don't tell him anything yet. Get inside first. I'll check in on the 1st and 15th, this box, before noon, if I miss 2. The message cut. Time stamped 81 days ago. 2, said Jules into my silence, tapping the phone. She has not missed a check-in. 11 straight, 1st and 15th, before noon, each from a different burner, each under 20 seconds. Which means for 81 days your ex-girlfriend has been alive, in hiding, and running a schedule like her life depends on it. Because it does. And 3, she looked around my apartment, at my rebuilt bookshelves, my studio corner, my life. The thing she left, Owen. The thing they've already come in here once to find. The reason your accounts are frozen, and a credit card you never opened has this address on it. It's still here, somewhere in this apartment. And you and I are going to find it before the people watching this building decide to stop being patient. I looked at her, this near stranger with a duffel bag who had just rescored the worst 90 days of my life in one sitting, and I asked the only question my flattened brain could produce. Watching. What do you mean, watching? Jules Costa reached over, turned off my kitchen light, walked me to the window, and pointed down at a gray sedan parked across the street, with its engine off, and a man in it not looking at his phone. Day 1, roommate, she said. Welcome to the last 3 weeks of my life. We didn't sleep that first night. We talked, low, away from the windows, and Jules gave me the version of the last 3 weeks that she'd been carrying alone, and I gave her the 3 unrelated disasters that had been happening to me. And somewhere around 2 a.m., we laid them on the table together and watched them stop being 3 stories. Here's what Vanessa did for a living, stated plainly, because it's the spine of everything. She was a bookkeeper at Halverson Wealth Partners, a boutique firm with maybe 40 clients, all of them rich. One of them, the reason any of this happened, very rich and very careful about not appearing to be. Vanessa reconciled accounts. She was, by every account including her own, meticulous to the point of being annoying about it, the kind of bookkeeper who notices when a rounding error has a personality. And about 4 months ago, per what she'd told Jules in fragments before she ran, she'd noticed something with a personality. Money that came in dirty and left clean, routed through a lattice of client sub-accounts and a philanthropic fund that donated exclusively to entities that turned out to share a mailing address in a state that doesn't ask questions. She'd found the firm laundering money. A lot of it. For someone whose name she'd only ever seen abbreviated in the files as the principal, and whose reaction to being noticed, she'd become convinced, would not be a stern memo. She didn't go to the authorities, I said. Why didn't she just... Because Rule 1 on that voicemail is no police, Jules said. And she didn't invent that rule from nowhere. She told me, the week before she ran, that she'd started pulling the thread and the thread went up. That one of the firm's biggest clients had a name she recognized from a completely different context. A public one. An official one. Jules held my eyes. She wouldn't say the name to me on an open line. But she said the sentence I can't stop hearing. Jules, I don't know who I'd even be safe reporting it to. That's why she ran instead of testified. She didn't have proof she could hand to someone she trusted, because she wasn't sure the someone existed. So Vanessa had done what a meticulous person does when she can't trust the system. She'd built her own insurance. She copied everything. The reconciliations, the routing, the donation lattice, the thread that went up, onto something physical, because a meticulous bookkeeper in 2020 whatever doesn't trust a cloud she can be subpoenaed or hacked out of. And then she'd hidden that something in the one place she controlled and the firm didn't. Our apartment. My apartment. And then she'd blown up her own life to draw the danger away from the hiding place and away from me. The cruel typed note, the dead phone, the vanishing, so that anyone hunting her would follow her, into the wind, and leave the quiet sound engineer and his quiet apartment alone. It had half worked. She'd gotten herself hunted successfully. But she'd underestimated one thing, the thing that had turned my 90 days into a slow-motion siege. The firm didn't believe a bookkeeper would run without keeping leverage. So while some of them chased Vanessa, others stayed behind and went to work on me. Not to hurt me, not yet, but to flush the apartment. The frozen bank account, the fraudulent credit card, the nothing stolen burglary. Those weren't 3 bad luck events. They were 3 searches. Financial pressure to maybe make me move out so they could take the place apart empty. A break-in to physically hunt for it. And a paper fraud campaign to build a pretext. Because, Jules explained, and this is the part that made my skin go cold, if they can get you investigated, Owen, get your accounts flagged, get your name attached to financial crimes, then someday soon a man with a real badge and a real warrant can walk into this apartment and search it top to bottom, legally, and take whatever he finds, and it'll look like justice. That credit card isn't identity theft, it's the opening argument. And the badge from the voicemail, I said slowly. Assume it's his until proven otherwise, the client whose name went up. She never said it to me. Jules stood, went to the window, checked the sedan the way I'd already learned she checked every window. But you don't tell your best friend no police. Assume the badges are his, about a guy who owns a car wash. Whoever's at the top of this thread has access to people who can make an investigation appear. That's the whole reason she ran instead of walking into a precinct. And it's the reason you and I can't walk into one either. Not until we're holding the one thing that's currently keeping her alive and keeping you framed. She turned around. We have to find what she hid, Owen, before they get their warrant, and before she misses a check-in. Whichever comes first is our clock, and I don't know how long either one is. I looked around my apartment, really looked, for the first time, the way you look at a room that's been lying to you, and I said the thing that turned the siege into a search. She left me one instruction. The only handwritten line in the whole note, don't sell the Martin. I stood up. Jules. She didn't care about the guitar. She never touched the guitar. I was already moving toward the studio corner, toward the case in the stand I'd walked past 10,000 times. But she knew I'd keep it forever, and she knew I'd never let anyone else near it, and she knew those exact words would mean nothing to anyone hunting her, and everything to me, if I ever thought to listen. The Martin weighed wrong. I'd known it for 90 days the way you know a mix is off before you can name the frequency, a guitar you've held for 15 years, and some sleeping part of me had registered every time I lifted it that it sat a few ounces heavy and didn't quite balance at the neck anymore. I'd blamed humidity. I laid it across my knees under the good light, loosened the strings, and reached through the sound hole with 2 fingers and taped to the inside of the back, dead center where a mirror and flashlight inspection would miss it, and a person would have to know, was a flat, rigid rectangle wrapped in cloth. A memory card and a folded sheet of paper, and on the paper, in Vanessa's real handwriting, the grocery list hand, the untyped hand, the hand that meant this part is true, 4 words. Owen, I'm so sorry. We did not put that card into anything connected to the internet, because Jules, 3 weeks deep and smart enough to know the limits of what she'd taught herself, said the sentence that saved us. If it's the leverage keeping her alive, the second they detect it's been opened somewhere traceable, she stops being useful to keep alive. We look once, offline, then decide who in the world we hand it to. End quote. So we bought a cash laptop from a pawn shop 2 neighborhoods over, pulled its wireless card out with a screwdriver in the parking lot, and opened Vanessa's insurance policy on a machine that had never touched a network and never would. It was everything Jules had described and worse, because it was organized, a bookkeeper's revenge, foldered and indexed and cross-referenced. 4 years of reconciliations showing dirty in, clean out, the donation lattice, every shell mapped to its shared mailing address, account statements for the philanthropic fund. And a folder, last modified the week before she ran, titled simply Thread, which was the one that made Jules sit down on the floor of our kitchen. The thread went up, and at the top of it, named, documented, his signature on fund authorizations he should never have touched directly, was Gregory Halverson's silent partner. The man whose capital had seeded the firm, whose name appeared on none of its public materials, and whose day job, Vanessa had annotated in a dry little margin note that was so her it hurt, was State Financial Oversight Commission, Deputy Director, Enforcement Division, i.e. the guy you'd report this to. LOL, not lol. The person you would go to in order to blow the whistle on this exact crime was the person the crime belonged to, Marcus Reyes, deputy director of the state agency that investigated financial fraud, sat at the top of a money laundering operation, and had a division of investigators, subpoena power, and the badges, Owen, the badges, the ability to open, steer, and close official inquiries at will. That's why Vanessa ran instead of reporting. That's why my accounts got flagged by an investigation no one could explain. That's why the credit card was an opening argument. Reyes wasn't hiding from the system. Reyes was a functioning piece of the system, pointed at us. Okay, I said when I could talk. Okay, so we don't go to the state. We go over it, federal. And that was the exact moment somebody knocked on our door. 9:10 at night. 3 knocks, evenly spaced, unhurried. Jules closed the laptop without a sound. I went to the door, and through the peephole was a man in a good coat holding a leather credential folder open at chest height, and he said, pleasant and clear, "Mr. Price?" "Marcus Reyes, State Financial Oversight. I'm not here to alarm you. I think you've been the victim of some financial crimes over the past few months. The account flags, a fraudulent card. I'd like to help you clear it up. May I come in?" He'd said it himself. He'd walked to my door and offered, in a warm, helpful voice, to investigate the crimes he had committed against me, which was of course the entire play. Get invited in, get eyes on the apartment, or better yet, get me to trust the nice man from the agency and hand over anything I might have found. Behind me, silent, Jules was already sliding the laptop into the oven, of all places, and mouthing a single word. "No." "It's late," I said through the door, keeping my voice the confused tired of an innocent man. "And honestly, no offense, I've had a rough 3 months, and I'm not letting anyone in without knowing what this is. Can you email me, or I'll come to your office?" A pause. Then, still pleasant, but with the warmth thinned to a film, "Of course. Smart even. I'll leave my card. You take care of that cleanup, Mr. Price. These things have a way of escalating if they're not resolved. Fraud investigations especially, they can go from a frozen account to a search of the premises very fast, and I'd hate for you to be caught unprepared." A business card slid under the door. "We'll talk soon. Give my best to Jules." Give my best to Jules. He'd named her roommate through a closed door, which meant he'd made her, which meant the sedan out front had photographed her moving in, which meant the clock we couldn't see the length of had just gotten dramatically shorter, because the one thing keeping Reyes patient was believing the leverage might still be lost somewhere in the apartment. The instant he suspected Vanessa's best friend had moved in and found it, patience became a liability he couldn't afford. We left through the building's back service entrance at 4 in the morning with the memory card, the pawn shop laptop, and the 2 burner phones Jules had bought on day 1, and we did not go back for a long time. What we needed now was almost philosophical, and Jules, 3 weeks deep, running on paramedic adrenaline and best friend fury, put it right in the diner where we sat until dawn. We're holding the one thing that convicts him, and we can't give it to a single institution he might own a piece of. State's out. It's his. Local police. Out, the voicemail said badges. Even federal. Owen. He's a state enforcement deputy. He has counterparts. 20 years of relationships behind every seal on every door. Hand this to the wrong person and it's not a case. It's a leak. And the leak has our address. She wrapped both hands around a coffee she wasn't drinking. Vanessa didn't run because she was scared of the firm. She ran because she couldn't find a safe hand. We have to solve the thing she couldn't. Find the one force in this whole rotten structure Reyes can't reach, and get everything to them in a way he can't intercept, before his warrant and before she runs out of luck. And then Jules said the thing that reorganized the whole endgame, the thing that had been sitting in the voicemail the entire time if you knew how to listen to it, which I, sound engineer, professional listener, finally did. "Play the check-in again," I said. "The last one. The 15th. She did. 20 seconds, a different burner, Vanessa's scraped raw voice confirming she was alive. And under it, beneath her words, in the room tone, the stuff my job is made of, the same 3 sounds in every single check-in, a specific bell pattern, a PA chime in a rhythm I knew, and a train. "She's not running, Jules," I said, and my voice did something. 11 check-ins, 81 days, and she's never left. She's hiding in the loudest, most public, most camera-covered place in the city, because it's the one place his people can't make someone disappear quietly. She's been 40 minutes away this whole time, hiding in plain sound. And I know exactly which station. I was right about the station and wrong about the plan, and the being wrong nearly cost us everything, so let me tell it straight. The bell pattern was a crossing chime unique to one transit branch. The PA cadence belonged to a specific interchange. The train under it was elevated, not subway. It triangulated to the district around Meridian Station, not the platforms but the all-night warren around them, the 24-hour laundromats, the bus terminal annex, the kind of neighborhood where a person with cash and no name can stay awake and surrounded and unvanishable indefinitely. Vanessa hadn't fled to another country. She'd embedded herself in the 1 square mile of the city with the most witnesses per hour, and waited for the leverage in my guitar to either save her or get her killed. We didn't go charging in. Jules stopped me. If we can find the station from the recording, so can he. His people have had the same voicemails on tap if they ever got Vanessa's old phone, and even if they haven't, a man with agency resources can pull transit audio too. So we did it Vanessa's way. We became patient. We used the check-in system she'd built. On the next first of the month, Jules answered the pattern. She'd learned that Vanessa, on 2 prior occasions, had stayed on the line 3 extra seconds if Jules said a specific childhood code phrase, a bridge left open between best friends for exactly this. And this time Jules said it. And Vanessa stayed, and in a rushed, wire-taut 90-second conversation conducted between 2 women who'd been best friends since they were 11, we made contact with the ghost who'd started all of this. I'm not going to give you all 90 seconds. I'll give you the part that mattered. Because when Jules said we found it, Ness, the Martin, we have it, it's out of the apartment and it's safe, there was a silence on the line so total that Jules checked the screen, and then Vanessa Lorne, who had run into the dark and blown up her life, and typed a cruel note to keep a man safe, started to cry in a way that 81 days of terror had apparently been saving up, and said, "Is he okay?" Just, Jules, is Owen okay? I took the phone. First time she'd heard my voice in 90 days, and every speech I'd built collapsed, and what came out was, "You made it cruel so it would be safe." I figured out that part. It's the only reason I'm not angry, Ness. Now let us finish it. Here's what the 3 of us built, on burner phones over 4 days, and why it worked. The problem was never finding a law enforcement agency. The problem was that Reyes had relationships inside all of them and could turn a case into a leak. So we stopped trying to find a clean cop. We went around the entire apparatus he lived inside, to the 2 forces on Earth that a corrupt enforcement official cannot subpoena, phone call, or professionally relationship his way out of. An investigative journalist at the region's largest paper who had, 3 years earlier, published a series on state agency corruption that Reyes's own division had tried and failed to discredit. A woman named Priya Anand who was already, it turned out, sitting on 2 unrelated tips about Halverson and lit up like a switchboard when Jules described the donation lattice, and, simultaneously, the Federal Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, approached not through a local field office where Reyes had golf partners, but through the journalist's own vetted contact, a route Reyes couldn't see coming because it didn't run through any door he was watching. The move was simultaneity. Vanessa's data would go to both at once, on the same morning, under embargo, the reporter holding a story she couldn't publish until the federal filing was confirmed, the feds holding a filing whose existence the reporter could detonate publicly the instant anyone tried to make it quietly disappear. Each was the other's insurance. A leak to Reyes now triggered a front-page story. A killed story now triggered a federal record. He couldn't buy both, couldn't threaten both, couldn't reach both. For the first time in 90 days, we held the thing that circles a person and makes them behave. Not evidence, but evidence he couldn't control the disclosure of. We set the handoff for a Thursday. And Marcus Reyes, who had not survived 20 years at the top of a laundering operation by being slow, made his move the same Thursday morning, because of course he did. The patient phase was over the moment he'd said give my best to Jules through my door, and he'd spent the days since manufacturing the one thing that could still beat us to the finish line. The warrant. Jules's phone, her real one, which we'd kept alive precisely as a tripwire, got a call from a detective she didn't know, following up on a fraud referral, asking her to confirm she resided at my address. An hour later, a contact of Priya's inside the courthouse flagged it. An emergency search warrant application for my apartment, filed under a financial crimes pretext, sworn out on the strength of the fraudulent credit card and the frozen account investigation, the opening argument closing. If that warrant executed before our handoff landed, Reyes's own people would search my apartment legally, and when they found nothing there, because the card was in Jules's jacket 40 minutes away, the same official machinery would pivot instantly to us, to Jules's known address, to a manhunt with a badge and a paper reason. He was going to reach the finish line through a courthouse, wearing the costume of justice, and there was nothing illegal we could point to because he'd built it all to look legal. Then we don't beat the warrant, I said, in the parking garage where we'd been living out of Jules's car, and I finally understood the shape of the whole thing. We make the warrant the story. Priya's been asking what the visual is, what makes this front page instead of paragraph 6 financial crime. This is it, Jules. A state enforcement deputy rushes an emergency warrant to search the apartment of the ex-boyfriend of the bookkeeper who caught his firm laundering money. On the same morning, federal investigators receive her evidence. He's not executing a search. He's walking, on the record, in daylight, into the exact frame we need. Call Priya. Tell her to have a photographer at my building at 8 a.m. and call the feds and move the handoff up. Thursday, 8 a.m., is a piece of choreography I'll be proud of on my deathbed, so I'm going to walk you through it in order. At 7:55, a federal courier, real, credentialed, arranged through Priya's vetted FinCEN contact and confirmed by a phone number I called myself, accepted from Jules, in the lobby of the federal building across town, a sealed package. The memory card, a certified forensic copy made overnight by a firm that does defense-side e-discovery and asks no questions for cash, and a sworn statement from Vanessa, notarized at a 24-hour shop near Meridian Station by a woman who'd spent 81 days becoming very good at doing necessary things at strange hours. Receipt stamped, time logged, federally in the record, beyond recall. At 8 o'clock, Priya Anand's story went live but locked. Written, edited, legal reviewed, sitting one click from publication, under an embargo that would lift the instant either the feds confirmed receipt or anyone interfered with us, whichever came first. A photographer stood across the street from my building drinking coffee like a man waiting for a bus. At 8:10, Marcus Reyes arrived to execute his warrant. He came correct. 2 actual detectives who had no idea they were props. A marked unit, the paper in his hand, the good coat, the calm. And he walked up to my building in the clean morning light to search an apartment for leverage that had spent the night becoming a federal exhibit, and a woman he'd never met stepped off the stoop with a press credential and a recorder and said, "Deputy Director Reyes, Priya Anand, The Dispatch. Can you comment on why the Enforcement Division is searching the residence connected to Vanessa Lorne on the same morning FinCEN received her documentation of laundering at Halverson Wealth Partners, a firm your name is attached to as a silent capital partner?" I watched it from Jules's car, half a block down. I have spent my career watching sound hit a room and change it. I have never seen anything hit a man the way that question hit Marcus Reyes. Because every single element of it was already true, already filed, already photographed. The warrant in his hand had, in one sentence, been converted from an instrument of the law into the centerpiece of the case against him, and he knew it in real time, on a public sidewalk, with a camera going. He didn't answer. The professional in him did the only survivable thing and simply stopped, didn't execute the warrant, didn't threaten the reporter, turned and walked back to the car with the paper still folded, because a search now would be tomorrow's photograph, and an arrest of the reporter would be tomorrow's front page, and there was suddenly no move on the board that didn't end up in print. He got exactly one sentence off, to Priya over his shoulder, and it's the one that ran under the photo. "I have no idea what you're talking about," said by a man walking away from a warrant he'd sworn out himself. You could not have written it worse for him if you tried. By noon the embargo lifted, because the feds confirmed receipt, and Priya's editor needed no further encouragement. By evening it was everywhere, and the beautiful machine-precise horror of what Vanessa had built 4 months earlier became clear to everyone at once. Her data didn't just implicate Reyes, it indexed him. It made him the most legible criminal in the state, and the instant he was radioactive, the entire structure that had protected him inverted. Halverson, facing federal exposure and no longer shielded by his silent partner's badge, did what the number two man always does and began cooperating before his lawyer finished parking. The frozen account, the fraudulent card, the alphabetizing burglary, all of it, documented in Reyes's own division's records, became evidence of the cover-up rather than cover for it. The aftermath, at the speed this channel does aftermaths, Marcus Reyes was arrested within the week on federal charges, money laundering plus the more photogenic ones, abuse of official position, wire fraud, and the retaliatory investigation against me, which a federal prosecutor characterized in a sentence I've had laminated, that he had weaponized a state enforcement division to hunt the victims of his own crime. Halverson's cooperation mapped the whole lattice. My accounts were unfrozen, the fraudulent card evaporated, and the memory card taped inside a 15-year-old guitar turned out to be, per Priya's series, the most complete documentation of state-level financial corruption in the region's history. A hell of a thing to have carried around every time I noticed my Martin sat a little heavy. Vanessa came in from the cold on a Tuesday, into the same federal building, under real protection this time, the genuine article, vetted, the kind you can only safely accept once the person hunting you is the one in the cell. I was there. 90 days of hiding and 81 check-ins and a woman who'd typed the cruelest note of her life to keep me out of a story she couldn't get me out of any other way, walking across a lobby toward the two people who'd finished what she started. She hugged Jules for a long time. And then she stood in front of me, this person I'd loved and buried and unburied, and she didn't apologize again. She'd used up her apology on a folded sheet of paper inside a guitar, and we both knew it. She just said, "Did you sell it? The Martin?" I said. "Are you kidding? It's the smartest thing either of us ever owned." Now, I have to be honest with you about the end of this, because this channel doesn't do the fake version, and the fake version is right there and I'm not taking it. Vanessa and I did not ride off together. You've been trained by 1,000 of these stories to expect it, and I felt the gravity of it too, standing in that lobby. But the truth is that what she did to survive, however much I understood it, however much it was for me, had happened, and you don't unhappen 90 days by wanting to. We are now something I don't have a clean word for. Two people bonded permanently by having been on opposite ends of the same act of love, who have dinner every few months and can finish each other's sentences about a thing nobody else on earth was inside of. That's real. It's just not the ending the title promised, and I'd rather tell you the true one. The ending the title promised turned out to be about the other person. Because here's what 81 days in a besieged apartment does. The woman who moved in with one duffel bag and turned my deadbolt like she'd rehearsed it. The paramedic who'd been quietly watching me across 2 years of birthday parties with a look I'd misfiled. Who answered a roommate ad 11 minutes after it posted, not for what I first feared, and not only to search my apartment, but because, as she finally admitted to me somewhere around week 3 of car sleeping and burner phones, I told myself it was all for Vanessa, Owen, and most of it was. And some of it was that I've spent 2 years wondering what you were like when she wasn't in the room. Jules Costa, who said, "On day 1, I've waited for this." Who, it turned out, had meant several things by it, and had been honest about exactly one until it was safe to mean the rest. She never moved out. The lease has both our names on it now, and the second bedroom is a studio, and the Martin lives in a case with a humidity meter and absolutely nothing taped inside it. And I checked, and Jules watched me check, and laughed, and that laugh is the actual ending of this story. 2 questions before you go, and this week they matter more than usual, so sit with them. First, you get a typed goodbye note from someone who only ever handwrote, and a cold, clean exit from someone who couldn't end a phone call abruptly. And everyone around you, including the reasonable voice in your own head, tells you people leave, accept it, move on. Honestly, would you have listened to the artifacts? Or would you have called it grief and let the wrongness go, the way I almost did for 90 days? Because the whole thing turned on being willing to believe that the story you'd been handed was engineered. And that's a hard thing to believe about your own heartbreak. And second, the one I really want, has someone ever been cruel to you, cleanly and deliberately, in a way that didn't fit who they were? And did you ever find out, later, that the cruelty was protection? That they made it sharp so it would keep you out of something? Who was it? What was the note or the fight or the door that closed? And did you ever get to learn what it was really for? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one, and somewhere down there is a person still angry at a goodbye that was actually a shield, and your story might be the thing that makes them look closer at it. Subscribe if this one got past your deadbolt, because next week I'm telling you about the landlord who knocked on my door with a cashier's check for 14 years of rent, every dollar I'd ever paid him, and a letter that opened, "Before I die, you should know what I owed your mother."